Okay, so let's start our training today. All right. Based on our training schedule, today we are going to start the content of day 4. And earlier we already achieved the function of show the map and query the attributes, as well as the measurement of distance and area. And also we achieved the search function, which can allow us to include the keywords and get the detailed information of the building. And today and tomorrow we are going to start the part of related to the data service. And today our topic will be modify the attributes and the geometry of the building. And tomorrow we are going to start to create a new building and delete an existing building. So first, we need to start up our iServer. Here, I already started it. And if we go back to our code and run it on the web browser, we can see here, this is our content today. Sorry, this is our content which we already achieved. And let's review it. First, we show our own map and the being base map, the satellite image data image layer as the base map. And then we achieve to add the function of click the building to query the detailed attributes of it, and also some measurements. But here we need to consider that if we want to modify the attributes of the building, so where the button we put is the perfect way. In my personal understanding, I think if we can add a button inside of the pop-up, that will be perfect. So the first step of today is we need to modify the div of pop-up and add the button on it. Okay, so we can go back to our code, and inside of the toolbar.js, we use the OpenLayer store overlay to add the pop-up. And here we organize the content HTML and put an table inside, and set this content HTML as the inner HTML of content. And as you know, the content is inside of the container. And then we just need to add the overlay to the map. So, but here we need to notice is we have two ways to show the pop-up. The first one is when we draw a point and based on the point to query the building, then the pop-up will show directly. And the second one is when we query when we input the keywords of the building, then the pop-up will also be shown. So if we want to add the div button, the button div to the pop-up, we need to modify these two parts. And here I have to admit that the code here is not very strong enough, because I repeated the same code 2 times. So in your code, I hope that you can combine these 2 parts of code together. And for example, we can write a new function or define a new object, such as we can name it as show the pop-up or organize the pop-up content. So in this way, we only need to modify once when we want to modify the content of the pop-up. Okay, so how to add a new button inside of the pop-up? Actually, it's not hard. After we finish the content of table, we can add a button here. So let's go back. Let's go to our step document. The first one is we need to add the modify attributes button to the pop-up. So it's here. We need to define the content HTML plus equal, which means content HTML equal the existing content plus the following content, the following string. And here we can say we add one button and give it an on-click event, which is added table. And then the value of the button is submit. So let's copy this part of code to our code, like this. Okay, and we go back to here. All right, now we can see we already add this button as a string inside in the format of HTML, and the on-click function is added table, and the submit is the value of the pop-up. And besides of this one, we still need to edit another one, which is after we input the key value, we input the keywords to search the building. So we can add it here. Okay, now let's go back to our code and show it like this. Submit. I think that's because of the format is incorrect. Let me put another one. Sorry. Yeah, here. Okay, now it shows correct. Here we add one button as a submit. So maybe you already noticed that when we organize the content of pop-up, I use the input text instead of only show the text here. So for this input, we can easily modify it in order to modify the attributes, and then we can submit the modification. Okay, so next we need to achieve the function of added table, because now when we click it, here will be there will be an error, which is the added table is not defined. And for adding this part of code, because it's not belong to the toolbar, also it's not belong to the sidebar. So I want to create a new JS file, which we can name it as edit. All right. And then we need to set the reference of this edit to our HTML, like this. And the JS, the name of JS is edit.js. And in this one, let's define the function of edit table. And let's test it with an alert. Okay, now when we open one pop-up and click the submit, there will be an alert. So next step, we need to start to achieve the edit table function. Okay, we can refer to the step document. First, we need to before that we need to as I did, we need to create a edit.js and add it as the library of the HTML, and then we need to achieve the edit table function. And before that, here is define the global variable current feature. So here, let me explain it to you. But first, please allow me to put this kind of part, this part of code to our edit.js. And the reason we need to define a global variable is because when we click on this function, when we click on this building, we need to get the geometry and the attributes from the queried feature. And later, if like this one, we already get the feature, but the button, when we click this one, when we click this one, it will call the current, it will call a new function. And inside of this new function, we still need the geometry, and we need the attributes of the feature. So when we define a global variable, and then in the toolbar.js, after we draw the point and query the building, like this is our feature. So we can give the feature as we can set the current feature as this feature. So we put the value of this feature to the current feature. So in this function, we can get the information of the feature we selected. So besides of the click to query building, and when we input the keywords, for example, when we input the keywords and get this feature, so we also need this current feature. All right. So and here, let me comment this part of code first, and then console log the current feature. And of course, in the current feature, we need to for the current feature, we need to add it when we input it. Yeah, it's here. Here I already I commented earlier. Okay, and now if we in the edit.js, if we console.log it, we can test it. When we query this building, we will show the information, and when we click submit, I will console.log the current feature. And we can say inside of this feature, the values and the OSM ID is the last three number is 569, and this is 569. No, 569. And when we click another one, this is 574. So yeah, let's say now the current feature, the value, and your OSM ID is 574. So that's why we need to set the global variable for the current feature. And of course, when we click the draw button, we want to clear the feature. So in the toolbar and the clear draw function, we need to set the current feature equal 9. That is, we clear the current feature because it's a global variable. All right. And next is we can start to achieve the edit.js. And inside, in order to achieve the edit.js, let me explain this part of code to you one by one. First, we can take a look at it from bottom to the top. It's the same. We need to define the online.supermap, openlayers.supermap.feature service. And this feature service need to based on a data URL. This data URL is not the map URL we used earlier, but it is the URL of data service. We can and then we need to we need to set the edit feature function and give it the parameter of edit feature parameters. And the service, this function is a callback function. And inside of the edit feature parameter, what we need to set is first we need to give it the features. This is the feature after modified. We need to get the attributes and geometry of it and then send it as a request to the server. After the server getting it, they will modify the existing feature as the new one. Okay, and besides of feature, we also need to point out the data source name, data site name, and edit type. This time we need to update the existing feature. And inside of features, what we need to do is first, it is from the current feature. And what we need to do is after we set the feature as current feature, when we click it, we need to get the value of modification. For example, let me comment them, and then here console.log the current feature again. Let's console.log current feature again. Okay, and here we can see we go back to our code and query this building. Now the code of this building is 1500, and if we modify it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then click submit. And in the current feature console log, we can see the values and the code change to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And if we want to modify the building for another one, modify the name. Let me find a building don't have name. Yeah, like this one. There is no name and there's no type. So we can give it a name as test, and to give it a type. Put the type as empty. Then when we click submit, we will get the feature after submitted, after modification. Yeah, and here we can see the name is already test. So for getting this kind of value, actually it's not hard. We just need to based on the ID of every input. We set the ID of every input area, input text here. Like when we put the content of Popup, we define an input, and then the ID equals the IDX, which is the field name. So back to the edit.js. Here that is we need to get, and this one is to based on the ID to get the value, and then give the value to the current feature dot values. So in this way we can get the modification of the feature. Okay, after we get it, we need to, based on the current feature, to update the feature in the data service. And let's take a look at the data service. So we can copy this kind of URL. Oh, sorry, it should be another one because I use the different name of the I use a different name of service of data source. Yeah, here we need to go to inside of data service, the data cadastral workspace REST, and then data sources. And then we can say our data source name is cadastral data. And then go to inside the data sites. There are all the data sites we have, and we need to use the building, right? This is the data site we will modify it. Now back to the data URL, and then we can say the level of this URL is going to REST and data. So we can copy this URL here and edit it like this. The localhost 8090 at server services, the data service name, and REST data. And also the data source, we need to modify it. The data source is cadastral data, right? And the data site name is building. And then the edit type is update. The return content, we set it as true. If we set it as false, then it will only return us the resource ID of feature after update. Okay, and after we and then in the callback function of edit feature service, we can set if the service result succeed true. That means if we modify it successfully, then the succeed will be true. What we need to do, we can add an alert as modify successfully, and then we need to refresh the layer, which is layer.getSource.refresh, and then we need to clear the current job. Okay, now let me show you the feedback. We gave it a name as test and click submit. Yeah, now we can see this is the feedback. Inside of the feedback, there is a result. We can see the succeed is true. That means we already modify it successfully. And next time, if I refresh our page and to query this building again, we can see that the name already modified to test. So even so, the data already been modified. And so here we can add this kind of part, this kind of word, the code. We add an alert and then refresh the layer. We need to refresh the layer because later we need to modify the geometry. We need to modify the geometry of the building. So we need to refresh it and also call the redraw function. Okay, now we already achieved the function, which is we can get the attributes of the building and modify the name like 111 and click submit. We got the alert modified successfully and click OK. Then the layer will be redrawn and next time when we query it again, the name will be 111. So talking about this, I want to show you because this part of code is related to the OpenLayers or Supermap library. So when we want to check the parameters of the Supermap class, such as the added feature parameter, we can go to the API of OpenLayers, yeah, which is here. We use the URL, which is iclient.supermap.io. After revisiting it, we can go to for OpenLayers, and then the API, the documentation. We go to inside of the documentation. Here we can see all of the class defined by Supermap. We can list them. We can find them here. Such as I search the added feature parameter and go to the class supermap.added feature parameters, and we can see the child parameter of this class. We have the features, return content, added type, and IDs. The IDs is only for when deleting, only for the deleting. And there are members of added feature parameter, like get the data set name, the member is data source name, data set name, added type, features ID, and the method of this one is the destroy or two JSON parameters. And also it's the same if we want to get the added feature service. It is a feature service. And in the feature service, we can see the method like added features or get features by bounds, get features by buffer. And in the added feature, we need to set the parameter, which is supermap or added feature parameters. So, and then the callback is the callback function. And here we define a function directly, right? Okay, so this is our first topic today, which is modify the attributes of buildings. And the second one is modify the geometry of building. We can go to the steps and the first step is the same. We need to add the modify button, div, which is to draw the geometry. Okay, so here let me copy the code to it directly, which is this one. So for editing the geometry, actually we can also put it inside of the pop-up, and here I add it here. Okay, so for this button, we give it the value as added, and the onClick function is added geometry. And when we save it, go back to our Word, go back to our code. Check what's wrong with it. Yeah, I better use this web browser. Okay, and which we go back here at the array of edit geometry, and it's the same here. Okay. Oh, sorry, it should be this one. Okay, now when we open this pop-up again, we can see here we add one new budget, which name is edit. And the call function, the unclick function is edit geometry, edit geometry. So next is we need to achieve the function of edit geometry. And here, let me copy the code first, and then I will explain to you all of them. All right. So for this one, for editing the geometry, first we need to use the control of open layers, which is open layers dot source. Which is the edit. Yeah, which is the interaction modify, and this is a control of open layers. So in order to use another style of it, we need to define a new vector layer, which name is edit layer. And the source, we use another source, the edit source, and they are all vector. And then we add this map, we add this layer to the map. So it's not hard to be understand, right? Because we already achieved it a lot of times. And then we need to achieve the edit geometry function. Inside of the edit geometry function, first we need to clear some of the earlier results, like the edit layer, the draw layer, the result layer. And then here is to set the offset of overlay. I will explain to you about this later. And then it's not hard, like modify to define the interaction of modify, and add this modify as interaction of map. Besides of modify, we also need the introduction of interaction of snap, which can help us to snap the mouse to the node of the feature. And then we use the edit. After that, we added the source, add the feature to the to this layer, because we need to add the current features geometry to the edit layer. And after that, we modify. We set the event, which is modify end, and we get the EVT, and the EVT is will be the feature after the modification, after we edit the geometry. So let's take a look at it. When we click on it, and here we already show this red feature is rendered in the result layer. Do you remember? And when we click the edit, the earlier feature, the earlier result layer will be clear, and then will be clean. And we add a new feature to the edit layer. And now we can see this feature already can be modified, because we add the edit feature. We add the modify interaction to the map, and also the snap. You can see when our mouse is clear, is near to the line, it will snap the point to the line. Okay, and after that, we can drag and drop the geometry to modify the geometry. For example, I can drag and drop it here. So this feature already been modified like this. So after that, we set the current feature as we set the modify end feature to the current feature. So now the current feature is already being modified like this, the geometry. And after we modify it, we can click the submit to get the current feature and submit the result. Let me check. Yeah, when we click submit, we will get the current feature. And here, let me console.log the current feature here. Okay. And we click it. Oh yeah, I got the reason. Actually, the feature already been modified because when we query this one, we can see the vector layer already shown as the feature we already modified. But the reason here it doesn't modify on the map is when we publish the map service using iServer, the iServer will enable the automatic cache. Let me show you. If I go when we can visit the page of my server and go to the manager. And inside of the service management, the map service. Yeah, and here we can see the enable the map tail cache. If the default one is, we need to it will be checked. And every time when we render the map tail using iServer, the iServer will automatically cache the tails and store it in the local. So here, let me show you the the folder. Let me show you the folder of iServer. Yeah, this is the folder of iServer. And then go to Web Apps, iServer, Output, and then we can see the cache. Inside of the cache, it stored a lot of cached tail. So this way is to improve the performance of map tail rendering. So in order to show the change of the vector, we need to uncheck it and click save. And besides of this, there is another parameter we need to set, which is we can go back to the go back to our HTML when we define the layer, when we define the layer and add this layer to the map. Here is an parameter which is you can say this is the class of tile supermap rest, and inside of the parameter, the member, there is an cache enable. This one, cache enabled, and this one is whether cache is enabled. So we need to set it as false because the default value is true. Okay, so let me show you here. When we define the layer, we need to set the cache enable as false. Yeah, we set the cache enable at false, and then go back to this. Yeah, now we can see this building already been modified. Yeah, let's modify it again. When we click it and click edit, so now we can edit this geometry, and I put it back like this. Click submit, then we got the alert of modify successfully. building already been modified. Okay, but here we can notice that currently we still can modify the geometry of the building. This is not what we want. So since we already add we already call the clear draw when we click the edit the submit button. So we need to add clear the modify interaction in the clear draw function. So we can go back to the toolbar and find the clear draw function here and remove the interaction of modify and also remove the interaction of snap. Okay, now let's go back to take a look. We can, when we click this, we can edit the feature. Let me suggest this, and then click submit, modify successfully, and all of them will be cleared, and this building already been modified. But here I forgot another one, which is we need to clear the edit layer, right? We need to clear the edit layer, which is we should use like this, and the edit layer dot get source dot clear. Okay, now let's do it again. When we take it and click modify, then modify it to the earlier, then click submit, modify successfully, and then the edit layer already been cleared, and this building already been modified. So, but here we still have another sentence, which is this one: the overlay set offset and 0, the get offset 1 and minus 30. What is that meaning? What is that means? So we can suggest, for example, for this building, if we click on here, do you remember the coordinates of our pop-up is based on the point we draw? And if we click edit, then even we zoom in, this building cannot be this building will be overlaid by this pop-up. So every time we click the edit, this pop-up will move upper for 30 px. So it's like this. If this pop-up overlay with our geometry, so we can click this button to move our pop-up upper, and then we can easily modify our geometry. After that, we click submit to submit the result of option. So this is the so that's why we set the overlay dot set offset. The current offset, and then the current offset, the second element of current offset is the height, is the y, and we use the y to minus 30. That means we move the pop-up upper 30 px. Okay, now go back to the step document. After we achieve the modify geometry function, we define the modify interaction and the snap interaction, and add the current feature to the edit source and modify it. And after that, we need to improve the submit function. We suggest we need to clear the earlier draw, and also we need to refresh. We use this function to refresh the tail layer, because after we modify the tail layer also need to be modified. All right, and in the clear draw function, we need to remove the interaction of modify, and remove the interaction of snap, and also clear the edit layer. Yeah, we use the edit layer dot get source dot clear. So this is actually this is all the content for today. We already achieved the function to modify the. We already achieved the function to modify the building, to modify the attributes, and to modify the geometry. Besides of this, I want to explain to you the last thing, which is about the data service of iServer. We can see at first, we publish our workspace as map service and data service. The map service is mainly used to it's been used to choose a map and to do some query. But the data service, the main usage of data service is to achieve the edit the feature online, edit the spatial data online, and the modification will be stored inside of the spatial data. And also let me open one at desktop and show it to you. Okay, so now go back to the data service. Inside of data, we can get the data source, and one workspace can contain multiple data sources, but now we only have one. In the data source, and then we can go to the data sites. Here we can get all of the data sites inside of this data source. And when we click one of each, these are the basic information of this building data set. And in the features, we can get all of the features. And actually, the website of iServer provides the same function for us to modify the feature online, like add feature, update feature, delete feature. When we use the add feature and update feature, we need to give the feature in the JSON format. And when we want to delete it, we need to use we can use ID or SQL condition to delete it. So in order to test the code, actually we can also achieve the function here. We can also achieve the request here. For example, if I click, I modify it as 222, and monitor the network, click submit, then we can see there is already one push request sent to this URL, which is our iServer. And in the body here, this is the data sent to the being sent to the server, and we can see this store all of the information of our geometry of our feature, like the field name and the field value, and also the geometry information. So for this kind of format, we can copy it directly and go back to the iServer and paste it here. So just now I already modified the name as 222, right? But here if we added the value of name as 3333, then click then choose it as update feature and click create feature result. Here we can see the update features successfully. Now if we go back and refresh our page, then query it again, we can see the name already been modified to 3333. So that's it. So in the page of iServer, we can achieve the same function of iClient, of using iClient. So yeah, this is what I want to explain to you. That means every time if we need to modify the feature online, we need to use the data service. And to show you the modification, here I want to show you the data that itself in the Supermap I desktop. And just now we modified the feature, which is, let me find it. I think that is this one, right? And when we check the attributes of this feature in iDesktop, we can see the name already been modified to 3. Yeah, to the result we did. Okay, so this is using. So today we manage use the data service to achieve the function of modify attributes of building and then modify the geometry of building. So in the real project or in the real commercial application, we can, based on this kind of function, to achieve more advanced function, such as we can set the different permission for different users. And we can set the checking step. So based on the data service, we can achieve the cadastral management application. This is the basic sample of management of cadastral data based on the cadastral data. Okay, that's all of the content today. Please let me know. Please send your question. Please let me know if you have any question. Yeah, if there's no question for now, I think we can finish our training today. It's the same. We will upload our step document to the Google Classroom. And I hope that you can follow the steps to achieve the added attributes and added geometry function, added geometry of the feature to achieve this function by yourself on your code. Okay, thank you everyone. I think we can call it a training today. Thank you for your time.